Spartans, A New Day, by Rory Simpson. Cover art by Alexandre P. Narrated by Emily Pankhurst. The story you are about to experience is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual events, locations, or individuals, living or deceased, is purely coincidental. The author has used creative license to craft a narrative intended for entertainment. Please be advised that this story contains political themes, drawing inspiration from both left and right-wing ideologies, which are portrayed in both positive and negative lights. Readers are encouraged to approach these elements with an open mind and a respectful outlook. This work seeks to represent a range of perspectives and foster thoughtful reflection on contemporary issues through a fictional lens. The voice used in this production was created using Elevenlabs voice synthesis technology. The original voice actor provided full permission for the use of their voice and was appropriately compensated for their contribution. All rights have been secured and the use of this voice complies with ethical and legal standards. Chapter 17. Wakey, Wakey. While Nick recovered from the previous night's confrontation with the deranged Adonis-fueled madman, he slept soundly, cocooned in the soft embrace of his bed. The battle had drained him, physically, mentally, emotionally. Bruises lined his ribcage, his arms ached from strain, and his thoughts still echoed with the impact of every blow exchanged in that brutal dance with Ben Reading. But his body, ever more honest than his mind, had made the decision for him. Rest was not optional. It was survival. The room was cloaked in calm. Gone was the lo-fi music Apollo often piped in as ambient distraction. Instead, the air was thick with the gentle lull of simulated waves lapping against a distant shore. A beach, perhaps the one from his childhood holidays. The soundscape had shifted sometime during the night, an unconscious cue from Apollo, responding to his elevated stress levels. The AI had good instincts. Nick, deep in sleep, dreamed not of his parents, nor of the fire that had taken them, nor the guilt that came with surviving. No, this dream was of Zeus. Not just the suit or the mission, but himself in that identity. Strong, decisive, just. He fought off gangs with effortless strikes, brought criminals to their knees with words as much as action, and even confronted Thanatos on a shadowed rooftop, blades crackling with energy. He wasn't just pretending to be a hero, he was one. But peace never lasted long. The faint creak of his bedroom door pulled him from the edge of his dreamscape, followed by the low, mechanical growl of a hoover switching on somewhere uncomfortably close. The serenity shattered like glass underfoot. "Come on, wake up," a woman's voice called in Mandarin, firm but not harsh, rising deftly above the drone of the vacuum. Nick stirred with a soft groan, the remnants of his dream slipping away like morning mist. He squinted into the dimness, eyelids fluttering open against the murk. "Apollo," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Lights?" The room responded at once. A soft ambient glow warmed the space, mimicking the hue of early sunlight, spilling through clouds. The walls responded with subtle gradients, the ceiling blooming with a soft sky-toned wash. As his vision sharpened, he caught sight of Mei Shang standing near the foot of the bed like some serene domestic warrior. She was impeccably composed in a pair of green silk Chinese pajamas, traditional, elegant, yet practical. Her hair was swept up into a flawless bun, and she held the hoover with one hand like it was an extension of her will. She moved with grace, yet purpose, as though waking someone with industrial noise was an art form she'd long mastered. "Good morning, Nick," she said warmly, switching off the machine with a polite click. "Did you sleep well?" Nick sat up slowly, wincing slightly as tight muscles protested. "I'm all right, May, though I don't think my room needed vacuuming." May's eyes twinkled with dry humour. "I know, but when you don't get up after 7, this is how I wake you. I used to do the same with my children, though they've since learned to rise early on their own." Nick chuckled, voice still husky with sleep. "You're a menace." She smiled, unbothered. "Just doing the job your uncle hired me to do." "I didn't even set my alarm," Nick muttered, dragging his hand across his face. "I was planning on a lie-in." "As your housekeeper," May replied smoothly, "and now also your educator, I must inform you that 7 a.m. is the designated wake-up time." She began rolling the hoover towards the hallway, her steps light and sure. But just before crossing the threshold, she paused and looked back, her expression softening. "I've made breakfast," she said, her voice tinged with quiet affection. "It's in the kitchen, still warm." Nick's eyebrows lifted. "Breakfast? What did you make?" "You'll have to come down and find out," May replied, her lips curling into a sly smile, the kind that mothers reserved for surprises they knew you'd love. Nick grinned in spite of himself. "Now I'm interested." He pushed back the covers and swung his legs over the side of the bed, the cool floor grounding him. "Give me a few minutes to freshen up." "Take your time," May said, already halfway down the hall. "But not too much." The door closed gently behind her, leaving Nick alone in the gently lit room. He sat there a moment, running a hand through his hair, still feeling the dull echo of last night's fight in his bones. But somehow, the pain didn't feel quite as heavy. Now alone, Nick stretched, arms reaching up, with a quiet groan as his muscles eased into movement. His joints cracked faintly in protest, reminders of the bruises beneath the skin, but also of healing in progress. He rolled his shoulders, flexed his fingers, then shook off the last vestiges of sleep with a yawn that ended in a grin. Despite the slightly jarring wake-up call, there was a strange comfort in it. The ritual, the consistency, the gentle tyranny of Mei Shang's morning regime. It had structure. And for the first time in a long while, structure didn't feel like a cage. It felt like home. He padded across the floor to the full-length mirror, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. What greeted him nearly made him laugh aloud. One side of his hair was flattened against his skull, like it had been ironed down. The other side stuck out wildly, forming what looked like a windswept crest on a startled hedgehog. "Charming," he muttered, grabbing a brush from the nearby shelf. As he tried to tame the unruly forest of hair, he cast a half glare at the ceiling, as though the house itself were complicit. "Apollo," he said, the brush tugging through a particularly stubborn knot, "why didn't you warn me that May was going to wake me up like that?" Apollo's voice responded without delay, calm and clinical as ever. "Mrs. Shang is a registered guest in the mansion. Additionally, a vacuum cleaner is not classified as a weapon. Therefore, she was not flagged as a threat." Nick stared at his reflection for a beat. Brush paused mid-stroke. His expression flattened into the sort of deadpan that could rival granite. "To my sleep, she was," he said flatly. After tidying up his hair, Nick slipped on a deep blue silk dressing gown, its smooth fabric catching the morning light, and made his way downstairs to the northeast wing of the mansion. The soft clink of utensils and the distant murmur of news anchors drifted through the hall, guiding him like breadcrumbs to the kitchen. As he stepped inside, he was met by a gentle medley of warmth, both in temperature and tone. Golden sunlight filtered through the tall windows, spilling across the polished floors and casting soft shadows against the pale cabinetry. The morning news played unobtrusively from the holographic monitor embedded in the island counter, muted to a polite level. On screen, shaky footage replayed the chaos of the previous night. Zeus mid-battle. Muscles coiled, blade sparking. His opponent unnaturally strong and wild-eyed. Despite the drama flashing across the display, the kitchen remained a haven of calm. Anne and James sat on stools at the counter, both in coordinated athletic wear. Anne in a black racerback top and leggings with geometric patterns. James in a forest green tracksuit. Anne looked up immediately and smiled. "Morning, Nick." "M'ning," James added through a mouthful of food, raising a hand lazily in greeting, his hair still slightly damp from a shower. "Morning, both of you," Nick replied with a soft chuckle, taking in the relaxed scene. His eyes drifted to Anne's plate, where a golden crepe sat delicately folded with bright flecks of green. "Are those pancakes?" he asked, moving toward the counter. "Actually, they're egg crepes," Anne said, gesturing with her fork before spearing another bite. "It's a thin pancake filled with eggs, veg, sometimes meat. Really popular breakfast in China. Mum's a genius." Nick nodded, visibly intrigued. "Sounds amazing." Over by the stove, May stood at the induction hob, her posture upright and effortless, her green silk pajamas shimmering slightly in the light. She glanced over her shoulder as she cracked another egg into the pan. "Yours will be ready shortly, Nick." He watched as she spread the egg mixture across the crepe with a fluid sweep of her spatula, the scent of chives and sizzling oil filling the air. There was something almost meditative in her movements, measured, unhurried, precise. Each fold, each sprinkle of herbs, was a small act of care. "You have everything you need?" Nick asked, leaning on the counter, eyes following the process with interest. May didn't miss a beat. "No need to worry. Apollo informed me about the pantry. I simply place an order on the screen and the ingredients come through the delivery tube." She pointed with her chin toward a sleek chrome hatch embedded in the wall beside the oven. "Very convenient. Very futuristic." Nick smiled. "Very Stenhouse." May chuckled softly. Once the crepe had cooked through, she plated it with a practiced flip and added chopsticks, a fork, and knife with quiet care. She placed it before him, along with a small dish of chili dipping sauce and a cup of steaming jasmine tea. "Here you are." "Thank you," Nick said, his voice sincere. He took a bite and paused mid-chew, eyes widening. The combination of warm egg, crisp vegetables, the freshness of coriander, and the subtle zing of soy and garlic danced across his tongue. "This is incredible," he said, barely stopping for breath between bites. "Seriously, it's restaurant quality." May beamed, though her smile remained modest. "Just something simple I picked up growing up." He met her eyes for a moment. There was a depth behind her casual tone, years of repetition, of preparing food not just as sustenance but as a gesture of care. It struck Nick again how deeply she understood the importance of small comforts. As he ate, Anne leaned back on her stool, stretching her arms overhead. "James and I were thinking of using the gym downstairs today," she said casually. "Since we can't exactly go back to the leisure centre in Stevenage, might as well enjoy the billionaire upgrade." Nick gave a small nod. He hadn't yet explored the mansion's gym properly, but he'd heard William mention that it was more than well-equipped. Vaulted ceilings, reinforced flooring, even a simulated environment chamber for tactical training. "Oh, why not?" he said, taking another bite. "Let me finish this, and I'll catch up." "Great," James grinned, draining the last of his smoothie. "Bet I can beat you to the treadmill." "Not if you slip in the garden first," Anne teased, nudging him as she stood. James rolled his eyes with exaggerated drama. Then the two slipped out through the back doors, the soft hiss of the smart locks engaging behind them. Nick watched them vanish into the morning light, siblings finding peace in movement, routine, and a strange new normal. After finishing his breakfast, Nick stood and carried his plate to the automated dishwasher. The sleek chrome panel opened with a gentle hiss, accepting the dish with a mechanical arm before softly whirring into action. It was one of many marvels in the mansion. Quiet, efficient, invisible when not in use. Across the kitchen, May remained by the sink, sleeves carefully rolled up as she scrubbed pans and utensils by hand. Her motions were steady and purposeful, the clinking of ceramic and steel providing a grounded contrast to the smooth hum of automation. Despite the mansion's arsenal of smart appliances and AI-linked conveniences, May chose this path out of more than mere habit. It was principle. She'd grown up in the rural outskirts of Tianjin, raised largely by her grandmother in a house where electricity wasn't always reliable, and running water could be a luxury. There, in a home warmed by coal stoves and discipline, she had learned the value of effort, not because it was expected, but because it was necessary. Having machines do all the work just makes people lazier, she would say. In a post-apocalyptic scenario, you'd find yourself lost without the skills to survive. Right on cue, Apollo's voice emerged from the ceiling speaker, as smooth and respectful as ever. "Miss Shang, if the AI assistance of the household machinery troubles you, rest assured that each system has a manual override, should anyone wish to perform tasks themselves." May paused her scrubbing to glance up at the ceiling, arms folding with practiced doubt. "Thank you, Apollo, but that does not defeat my point. Too much convenience leads to complacency. I want my children to appreciate effort and resilience." Her gaze shifted to Nick, eyes narrowing just enough to convey the serious undertone beneath her warmth. "And that includes you as well. You may be the nephew of one of the richest men in the UK, but rest assured, you're going to pull your weight around here too." Nick nodded with respect. He could have argued or joked or sidestepped the comment, but he didn't. He understood the value behind her words. She wasn't trying to diminish him, she was trying to prepare him for life, for challenges, for reality. "I understand, May," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. "I'll do what I can to help out, whenever I'm not working with my uncle in his office." Her expression softened, pleased with the response. "That's good to hear. Anne told me you work privately in William's office. She mentioned you signed a non-disclosure agreement, so you can't discuss it." Nick hesitated only slightly. He'd become good at walking the line between truth and secrecy. Behind the locked doors of that office, he trained, planned, and suited up to take on gangs and terrorists under a godlike alias. But none of that could reach May, not if he wanted to keep her safe. With a half smile, he replied smoothly, "No comment." May arched a brow, reading between the lines. She respected boundaries when they were drawn with integrity. "I get it. Some things are best kept private, but don't think that means you'll be excused from chores. Whenever you're finished in the office, I'll have a few tasks set aside for you. A bit of cleaning, maybe some food prep. Fair." Nick gave a playful groan, smiling despite himself. "That's reasonable, I guess. Though you might have to bear with me. I've no idea how long each task my uncle gives me will take." May waved her dishcloth at him like a commanding general. "As long as you try. Effort counts, Nick." He nodded, her words echoing in his mind more deeply than he expected. Effort counts. It wasn't just about chores, it applied to everything. The mask he wore, the mission he carried, the life he was trying to rebuild. "I should probably go get changed and meet up with Anne and James in the gym," he said, glancing toward the hallway. "All right," May replied, turning her attention to the tablet mounted beside the pantry. Her fingers danced across the menu as she pulled up the kitchen inventory and skimmed through options for lunch and dinner. "I need to sort ingredients for lunch and start planning dinner. If I'm going to keep you 3 fed, I'll need a small army of helpers." "Then I'll try not to burn the rice," Nick teased, backing away with a grin. Nick headed back upstairs, May's words echoing quietly in his mind. "Effort counts. You're going to pull your weight around here too." They weren't meant as a scolding, just truth. Grounding, honest, necessary. And in a strange way, they stuck with him more deeply than some of the high-stakes debriefs he'd had with William. Inside his room, he approached the autodresser. With a gentle chime and a soft rush of air, the sleek wardrobe responded, its doors parting to reveal a curated range of athletic wear. Simple, efficient, just like everything else in the mansion. He tapped the screen, cycling through presets. The AI selected a streamlined outfit. Matte black shorts paired with a fitted charcoal grey shirt. The fabric designed for breathability, mobility, and support. He stepped back as the machine made quick work of swapping out his pajamas. The fresh clothes adjusted snugly to his frame. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the ease of movement, the readiness stitched into every fibre. Nick glanced at himself in the mirror. It wasn't just the outfit. There was a look in his eyes now, not just tiredness or youth or burden, but focus, purpose. It was subtle, but undeniable. He wasn't just a kid in borrowed power. He was growing into something more. Someone with reason. Someone with responsibility. He was ready. But just as he turned to leave, a thought caught him. Heavy, lingering. Ben. He froze in place. "Apollo," he said quietly, "do you have any updates on what happened to Ben Redding after I took him down? And the boy he stabbed, is he okay?" "Certainly, sir," Apollo replied smoothly. The ceiling speakers responding with quiet clarity. A moment passed as it accessed the latest public reports. The London Tomorrow Network reports that Ben Redding was arrested at the scene following Zeus's intervention. Due to aggressive resistance upon regaining consciousness, police officers were required to sedate him before transport. He has since undergone detoxification and has been placed under high security confinement at the Belmarsh containment wing. Nick exhaled slowly. When questioned about the vigilante's involvement, a police spokesperson stated, and I quote, "We do not condone vigilante activity, and we're not working in coordination with this so-called Zeus." Nick's fists clenched at the word. "Vigilante," he barked, frustration igniting like a short fuse. "Those useless cunts should be thanking me for doing what they can't or won't do." He began pacing the floor, heart rate rising, breath sharp. "They only show up when a rich person's in danger," he growled. "But when it's someone like Jaden, a working-class lad from some tower block, they vanish like he's not worth the paperwork." His voice tightened with rising contempt. "And don't even get me started on arresting people over their opinions. Half the time it's just spineless bureaucracy, twisting words for headlines and calling it justice. They can't protect anyone. All they care about is image." He stopped, gripping the edge of the desk, head down. The tension in his jaw pulsed. For a long moment, all he could hear was the beat of his own anger. Then he caught his reflection in the mirror again, this time not focused, not grounded, just a boy on the edge of rage. He closed his eyes and forced a breath. "Sorry," he muttered. "That was a bit much." Apollo, ever tactful, did not comment on the outburst. "Would you like me to continue reading the article, sir?" it asked instead, calm as ever. Nick nodded. "Yeah, go on." "Very well." Paramedics reached the victim, Jaden Henson, in time to stabilize him. Emergency field treatment closed the wound and he received a transfusion en route to St. Thomas's Hospital. Doctors now expect a full recovery within the week. Nick exhaled, the tightness in his chest beginning to loosen. Mr. Henson, speaking briefly from his hospital bed, said he wasn't fully conscious during the incident, but recalled a figure in silver saving him. He added, and I quote, "If I ever saw him again, I'd want to shake his hand and thank him." A quiet smile broke across Nick's face. The heat in his blood cooled, replaced by something else. Relief, pride, and a strange kind of peace. "That's wonderful to hear," he murmured. In that moment, the noise fell away. The headlines, the accusations, the bureaucracy, it all faded into the background. What mattered was this. Someone lived. Jaden would go home. His mother wouldn't have to bury him. He'd get another chance. Nick took a breath, steadied himself, and stepped toward the door. He still had a long way to go. There would always be anger, always injustice. But this was why he did it. Energized, he slipped into the hallway and made his way toward the gym. Anne and James were likely already there, stretching or comparing playlists. But for Nick, today wasn't just about cardio or technique. It was about staying sharp, getting stronger, becoming someone capable of more. Each step felt lighter, yet heavier with purpose. He would carry that boy's gratitude with him. He would carry the weight of every life he could still protect. Whatever waited next, he was ready, as Nick Adams and as Zeus.